A cold, unforgiving street. A beggar sits on the rough pavement, his clothes tattered, his eyes filled with silent pain. People walk past him as if he doesn't exist. Some glance at him with disgust, others don't even bother to look. Get lost. Seeing your face ruins my day. A wealthy man steps out of his shiny car, notices the beggar, and wrinkles his nose in disgust. People passing by turn their faces away as if he were a disease, as if he were not even human. The wind was cold, but his fate was even colder. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, but what hurt more was the way the world looked at him. With hatred, with indifference, as if his existence meant nothing. But was he really worthless? Or was he about to show the world something they had never imagined? The sun hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows over the narrow, dust-covered street. The air was thick with the scent of baked earth and the distant aroma of freshly baked bread that the beggar could never afford. He sat motionless, his frail body curled up against the cold stone wall. His clothes, once white, had turned into a ragged mess of brown and gray, barely clinging to his bony frame. His feet, cracked and covered in dirt, ached from walking barefoot on the rough ground, his stomach twisted with hunger. A dull, familiar pain he had learned to ignore. His eyes, sunken and lifeless, remained fixed on the dirt beneath him. He no longer looked at passers-by. What was the point? They either ignored him or spat at him. As he let out a slow, defeated sigh, a shadow fell over him. Something was different. People usually passed by without stopping, yet this shadow remained still. Slowly he lifted his head, his weary eyes locking onto an old man standing before him. The man wasn't like the others. He wasn't dressed in luxury, nor did he wear the look of disgust that others did. Instead, his face carried warmth, his kind eyes filled with something the beggar hadn't seen in a long time: compassion. The old man knelt beside him, his movements slow yet steady. He didn't flinch at the beggar's stench, nor did he hesitate before speaking. His voice was calm but carried the weight of unshakable wisdom. "My son, you don't need bread, you need courage. You are not a beggar, you are someone who can change the world." The beggar's heart skipped a beat. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him, not as a burden, not as a parasite, but as a person. He let out a dry, bitter chuckle. His lips cracked as he muttered, "But I have nothing. What can I possibly do?" The old man's eyes gleamed, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "You have everything, your mind, your courage, and your time. If you want something, work for it, learn, and shock the world." The beggar stared at him, his fingers slowly curling into the dirt beneath him. His mind, his courage, his time. He had spent years believing he had nothing, when in reality he had the three things that could change his life. For the first time in a long time, something inside him stirred. Not just hope, but something even stronger. That night, as he lay beneath the open sky, he didn't sleep with despair. That night he made a decision: he would no longer be a beggar. The first rays of the sun painted the city in hues of gold and orange, as if signaling the dawn of something new, something different. The cold streets, which once felt lifeless, now held a quiet promise of change. The beggar, no longer slumped against a wall in despair, stood tall. His frail hands, once used only to beg for coins, were now gripping a worn-out broom. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, his clothes still tattered, his feet still bare, but his eyes, they were no longer empty. For the first time in years, they burned with purpose. He had nothing, no money, no home, no support. But he had something far greater, an unshakable hunger to change his fate. With nowhere else to start, he took up the only job he could find: cleaning the streets. People walked past him, sneering, mocking. Look at him, from begging to sweeping dirt. Some things never change. Laughter echoed around him, sharp and cruel. But he didn't flinch. Their words had no power over him anymore. He had learned something valuable. Every great journey starts with small steps. As he pushed the broom across the dusty streets, his mind wasn't on the dirt. It was on the future. At night, when exhaustion pulled at his limbs, he didn't rest. Instead, he found himself drawn to the marketplace. He would sit quietly outside a shop, his eyes sharp, his ears alert. He listened. He studied. The merchants fascinated him. He watched how they spoke, how they smiled at customers, how they convinced people to buy things they didn't even need. He noticed the subtle tricks, the way they used their words, the way they handled money. Then a realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. Successful people are not the ones who have money. They are the ones who recognize opportunities. He had spent years believing that riches created success. But now he saw the truth: opportunity created success. And so he started learning, not from books, not from teachers, but from the world around him. The journey was brutal. There were nights when his stomach twisted with hunger, but he refused to beg. There were mornings when his body ached, but he refused to stop working. There were failures, so many failures, but he refused to break. His clothes remained torn, his feet remained bare. But his mind was no longer weak. Then one day, as he wiped the sweat from his brow, an idea struck him. If people can buy things, why can't I sell them? The thought sent shivers down his spine. It was a single idea, but it was the moment that would change everything. A morning sun rises as the beggar, now dressed in slightly cleaner clothes, stands on a busy street corner, holding a small wooden tray filled with simple items. His eyes are no longer filled with despair but with determination. This is his first step into the world of business. He had no shop, no capital, and no experience, just an idea and unshakable determination. So he started small. With the little money he had saved from sweeping streets, he bought cheap trinkets and everyday items from low-cost markets. Then he walked to richer neighborhoods and sold them at a slightly higher price. The beggar approaching customers, smiling confidently, learning to negotiate. At first it was a struggle. People ignored him, some laughed at him. Who would buy from a beggar? But he had learned the power of patience. The first day, he made only 2 coins. The second day, 4. He observed, adapted, and improved his sales pitch. Within a few weeks, he was making more money than he ever dreamed of. Within months, he was no longer a beggar. He was a small trader. But he didn't stop there. This was just the beginning. The same streets where he once begged, now a luxury car stops. The door opens and a well-dressed, confident man steps out. It's him. The beggar who was once ignored, insulted, and humiliated. People watch in shock and disbelief. The same faces who once rejected him now lower their heads in respect. After years of struggle, failures, and relentless effort, he built his own business, then another, and another. Today, the same people who once mocked him work for him. The same streets where he once begged for pennies now whisper his name as one of the richest men in the city. He proved something to the world. If a beggar can become a billionaire, then what excuse do you have? The billionaire stands in front of a massive skyscraper with his company's name shining at the top. He turns to the camera, his eyes filled with intensity. A powerful background score plays. Success belongs to those who refuse to give up. If I could do it, you can too. If this story inspires you, then like this video, share it, and comment below. I will never give up. This is not just a story, it's a lesson. If you truly want to change your life, stop listening to the world and start working. There are 2 types of people watching this video. 1. Those who will watch and forget. 2. Those who will take action today. Which one are you? The choice is yours. How did this story impact you? Do you also have the mindset to never give up? Comment never give up and start your journey to success.